All right. So welcome everyone. I'm Shari Oswald, and today I am excited to share with you Microsoft Lists, one of my favorite tools. And the funny thing is years ago, Microsoft was like, oh, Microsoft Lists, this brand new thing, and they're all excited about it. It's like, no, welcome to my world. This has been in SharePoint for like 20 years. So thank you so much, Microsoft, for deciding to, surface one of the best kept secrets of SharePoint. It's not just a document dump. We can actually share content there. So we're going to talk about the tool you never wish you or never knew you wish you had. But definitely want to thank the sponsor, Synology, probably Synology. And my apologies if I said that incorrectly, but we cannot do these events without our sponsors. And when you start seeing the same sponsors over and over again, you realize how much they really do support our community, and we can't continue to do these events without them. So very excited to thank them for their involvement and support. I am with Power Up Learning. I am the Chief Experience Officer, and we are not just a training company. I actually do not like the word train. I prefer the word learning. So I'm a learning expert instead of a trainer, because I want you to take what you do and incorporate it into your life and into your job, not just repeat what I did. So, and from that comes empowerment. So we are instructors, we're practitioners. We don't just teach or speak, we actually do. And I don't like to teach things I don't actually use, because then I can't share with you all my, what I call my sparklies, the gray hairs that my hairdresser does such a great job of covering up. Definitely earned those over the years. I love to share them with you. All right, so who am I? I am Shari Oswald. They call me Shortcut Shari. So if you've heard that little evil twin name of mine, the hardest thing to remember is how to spell my name, which is Shari. Even my grandfather misspelled my name for years. But check out LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. I have a blog, or you can email me at shortcutshari.com. I not only present, but I also have courses on LinkedIn Learning. 3 different SharePoint courses on LinkedIn Learning, a bunch of them on Pluralsight, and then on PowerBytes, which is our learning portal. I have standard content, but also my own custom content. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to give you an option for a trial at the end of the session today. All right, so what is our goal here today? This is my mission statement. I like to create passionate, energetic, and creative learning experiences for people so we can solve your business problems, not just learn how to use products. And hopefully that's with some technology and innovation. I can't fix people problems, but I can hopefully help you fix your business challenges. So today's session, I hope you will find it be passionate, because I am, energetic because I'm trying to be. I've had enough coffee today, and definitely a learning opportunity. All right, if you would like, you can use this link and get a free trial of LinkedIn Learning. So the bit.ly is case sensitive. So if you're watching this, I will also put this in the chat later. Actually, you guys don't have chat, so I don't know if you can share that out with them, or I'll just leave it there for a second. So it's bit.ly/LIL
Yeah, so I
dash
think
Shari, shortcut
you
Shari.
can paste it in the Q&A button.
I can, okay, I'll paste in the Q&A for you at the
Yeah,
end.
yeah.
Okay. All right, so why do we need lists? This is where the rubber hits the road as far as functionality and capability in Microsoft 365. Lists are basically Excel spreadsheets that just store data. So why would we use that instead of an Excel spreadsheet that just stores data? We'll talk about that here in just a minute. All right, so what is a Microsoft list? Let's talk about that. I'm going to bring up Microsoft. I have a little demo environment here. And, oh, Megan is apparently working on Teams here. All right, so Microsoft Lists is part of the Microsoft ecosystem of tools. And I always kind of like to give people, as I'm working as a consultant and as a trainer, a learning expert, I realize people don't even realize what they have at their fingertips, because they kind of log in, they check their email, they may go into Teams, but they don't realize there's this whole tool set behind the scenes that they have available to them. So I call this the toolbox. From office.com, if you just log in there, upper left-hand corner, there's a button. The technical term is the app launcher. We lovingly call it the waffle. And when you click the waffle button, there is an option for all apps. here are all of the applications that are available to me. These are all the tools in the toolbox in Microsoft 365. Yours might look different from mine based on your organization and what they've deployed, but these are all the ones that are available. Now, I kind of like this view, but I really prefer this other view. I'm going to click Explore All Your Apps, and for some reason, Microsoft decided to add another link, which is this one, All Apps. This is the dashboard I like to get to because not only does it tell you what you have, it also gives you an idea of what it's for. So thank you for making that an extra click, but we have, things like Planner, and we have OneNote, and we have your Excel or Forms, but right here in the middle is Microsoft Lists. So use to create, share, and track data inside of lists. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. Now, the first time you land list, if you haven't been there before, just like Microsoft knows what you have utilized and what you haven't, it also knows what you've utilized and they've updated since the last time they were there. And in this case, it's the first time that Megan has been on this in lists. So she's getting a little tutorial. See what you can do. It says track work, relay information, and visualize data together with your team in one place. So see what you can do. Right, start with a template Excel file or from scratch, view your data, click next, or set rules and notify your team. So you can create notifications and automation on these lists as well. So I'm going to click Let's Go. Now here's where the gotcha is. Microsoft Lists used to be specifically SharePoint lists in Microsoft 365 in a SharePoint library or SharePoint site. And they have now surfaced it and made it available for you to use for your own purpose, things that you want to be able to track for yourself. Here's the gotcha. When you click the new list, if you create the new list from here, you are creating a list for yourself by default, meaning you'd have to share it with other people. And what I commonly see are people create a list for themselves when it actually is a mission critical or business process oriented thing that they're trying to track information for. So just be aware that when you create it this way, you're actually creating it from your own SharePoint lists or your own Microsoft list, and it stores it in your OneDrive. So if you win the lottery and run away, and this is mission critical or business process, information, guess what? You just cut everybody off. So you want to make sure you create it in the right place. Right, so here are some of the default templates that Microsoft has created for you. Things like an issue tracker or employee onboarding or event itinerary. One of the ones I like to use a lot is the travel request because now we're traveling again. So I'm excited about that one, making sure that we're tracking our travel and that type of information, which is the template I'm going to use here in a minute. But let's look at maybe the content scheduler. I'm going to click that. This one I use, my daughter actually helps me with my social media, and this is where we track the content that I've created and that I want to publicize, and she posts it out on social media for me. If you don't have your own social media minion, you need one. Get yourself a social media minion, but she's much better at this than I am. And I don't have time for it, honestly. So this content, I'm busy creating the content. She's busy promoting it for me. So this is an option, but you can see I get a preview of that list just from selecting it. I haven't done anything yet, haven't created it yet. If I use the work progress tracker, maybe I decide to use that one instead. Now, in my opinion, 99.9% of the time, this is a great starting point, but most of these templates do not do everything I would wish it to do. So you can use it as a jump off point if you needed to. So gift ideas, maybe somebody's retiring and you want people to, say, here's some ideas for gifts that we would give them, or provide for them, ideas that people have, right? Expense tracker, so tracking your expenses, making sure you're being reimbursed for them. For on the personal side, maybe you want to track and share recipes, or maybe your company does something with recipes. That might be a good one. All right, so just click on the options, view them, see if this might work for you as a starting point. All right, so I'm going to use for this one content scheduler and click use template. And let's say this is social media. I'm going to give it a different name. And then you can put in a description. Now, everybody skips the description. This is my advice to you. Everything in Microsoft 365 is searchable. It's our job to make it findable. So how do we find that content? Not just by the name. You put the keywords that they would search for in the description. So here are social media posts for Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Therefore, anyone who has it with having the keywords in here, anyone who searches for Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn instead of just social media, they would actually discover this list if they have permission to see it. Everything in Office 365 is security trimmed, but we want to make things findable. Next, you get to pick a color, and if you know me at all, I'm obsessed with purple, so there's that one. And then you get to pick one of these basic icons. I'd love to see some additional ones because these don't always fit, but maybe I'm going to use the little light bulb. And then here is the kicker. Where do you want to store this list? By default, it's My Lists, which creates it in your OneDrive storage. So again, if this is mission critical, maybe it doesn't belong there. It probably belongs in a site where, like the sales and marketing team, if we're using this for our social media posts, maybe it belongs there, right? So for this example, I'm going to just do My Lists and click Create. So if this doesn't involve what I call the peanut gallery, all the other people, then I can put it in My List. And when I win the lottery and go away, nobody needs access to this. All right, so next we're going to say set up the features. Do you want to set up publishing date reminders? Yes or no. You can say next. Additional features. I'm just going to close this because it's saying, you can create Power Automates around this if you need to, and click close. All right, it says updating social media. Now, if I need somebody else, again, this is my storage for me, but maybe I do have that other person that's helping me with managing the social media or contributing to what the posts are, then I can share this list with someone else. I'm going to click the little share option and manage access, or I can, share the link with somebody. And let's say that I want Nestor to help me with this. So I'm going to select Nestor out of there and say, hi, Nestor, can you please add your social media posts here? Post ideas here, maybe. And you have the ability to decide how they can interact with this list. Can they edit it? Can they only edit the items that they've added? Can they only view the list, or you can customize the link settings? So I want him to be able to contribute and add items to this. I'm going to let him edit that and click send. Now he has access to this list as well. All right, now let's say I need to add a new item. We're going to create a new post. Let's say SPS announce SPS Philly, and description, say soft lists is the topic. Status is planned, assigned, and you can customize these. So as the speaker, maybe my status needs to be submitted or accepted, things like that, right? So this is going to be a planned post. So I'm going to say this one's planned. I need the due date, the draft date by, let's say, next week, or that's tomorrow. Let's do farther out. Publish by, and put that out for a certain date. Content type, is this a help article, a blog post, a video, or social media post? So you can choose what type of media this one is for. Again, this is customizable. And then is there an image that you would want to use for that? So maybe I have my image for as a speaker. This is my speaker image. And then after it's been published, where's the link to it when it's been published? Or any attachments that I might want to. Maybe it's my speaker profile or the outline for what I'm going to be presenting. So I'm going to click Save. And now I have a list of content. So I can create Power Automate around these. So I want to set a reminder for the draft due by or the publish by. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. There, went away. All right, and if there's any rules that you want to apply to them. So there's some automation behind the scenes for this list. So this is an example of a Microsoft list that you can create for yourself. Where else can we use that? 1 second. I have a dry throat for some reason. Okay. So this is my list for me to use. Now, what if I'm working in Microsoft Teams? Microsoft Teams, I'm going to go into my sales and marketing team and go to general. And you have, when you're creating your teams, here's my formula for creating a team. Your teams are who needs to work together. The channels are what are they working on? And the tabs across the top are how are we going to get that work done? How are we going to be able to, accomplish what we're trying to get done? The tools in the toolbox, if you click the little plus sign, this lets you create different applications, either from the apps that are currently in Microsoft 365, or I'm just going to scroll down. Whoop, look at all of these. These are all the tools. I'm still scrolling. I'm only in the L's that interact with your Microsoft environment. Of course, the ones that we have within our toolbox are at the top and readily available. So I'm going to choose lists as my option. So instead of having an Excel spreadsheet that everybody has to update, let's go ahead and create, let's say, a travel planner. So I'm going to click Save. And then choose a list. So I'm going to create a list. And I have several options. Again, I have a blank list. I can create from an existing list. So if I have one that already exists and I want to use that as the template, I can. Or if I have an Excel spreadsheet that I've been using or a workbook that I've been using, then I can use that one instead. All right, so for this example, let's go ahead and use the travel requests. And again, I can preview and see what's there. Yeah, this is a great starting point for me. I'm going to click Use Template, and travel requests is good for me, except I prefer initial caps. Submit your requests to travel for sales and marketing events. Again, makes it searchable, makes it findable. Pick another color, and it already picked the little airplane icon for me. So I'm going to click Create. And it's going to create the list. Now, how is this different than creating it in my lists? By default, everything in Teams is available to everyone in the team. I do not have to secure or invite or share or decide what they can do because they already have permission to do so because it created it in the Microsoft team, which, by the way, is not in Teams. One of my favorite sessions I deliver is spoiler alert, nothing actually lives in Teams. So where does this actually live? So if I want to see the list itself, guess what? It's in a SharePoint site behind the scenes. So I'm just going to kind of prove that to you and go to office.com, choose SharePoint from the waffle, and find my sales and marketing team. Here's the same sales and marketing team in the site contents. Here's that travel request list that I just created in 365. Now, why is this important to know? Because by default, when I created it in Teams, I gave everybody the exact same permissions. However, this is a standalone list in the backside of the SharePoint site that supports Microsoft Teams, and you can change the settings from here. So later on, you can decide, oh, I want to make this read-only, or I want people only be able to add or edit. So like advanced settings, I only want people to be able to edit the list items that are for themselves. So right now it says create and edit all items. create and edit items that were created by the user. I don't want them to be able to edit everybody else's requests, only their own. So if I click this option instead, that locks it down. So only those specific people can edit their items that they want. Other things that are in the list that you need to know about are turning off attachments. So if I don't want people to be able to attach items to this, because attachments to lists are not searchable and they're not discoverable. And I found that out the hard way doing a consulting gig at one point. Right, so you may want to disable attachments. Do you want to allow comments on those? Maybe yes or not, yes or no. Do you want to be able to create folders in this list? Yes or no. So there's a lot of settings that are the advanced settings that are important to know about in the backside of the SharePoint list. So make sure you explore those options. The other thing is your versioning settings. Do you want to create versions? Yes or no? And who can see those version settings? Okay, create a version each time you edit an item. Right now, by default says yes. And do you want to require content approval for submitted items? You can turn that on. I prefer the approval process now. This is kind of the old school way of doing approvals. All right, so then there's different, our different columns that are available. So the columns themselves, like I stated, probably 99.9% of the time, the list doesn't do everything I need it to do. I want it to actually track additional things, or I want them to track in a different way. These are the default columns that were created from the template. So reason for travel, who the requester is, the destination, the start date, the end date, and then there's a calculation based on the start date and end date, that, the duration of the trip, which airline, their estimated airfare, their hotel cost. All right, so what if they need a rental car? That's not in here. Do they have a points program they prefer to use? That's not in here. And so how do we make sure that we're capturing everything we need for that travel request when the template didn't provide everything we needed? That's where these new columns come into play. So I'm going to create a column. And let's say this is rental car. And I want to give it an opportunity for them to provide whether or not they need the rental car. Let's look at the type of data that we can store in a Microsoft list. And the type of data that you pick is important because there are certain calculations that only work on certain data types. All right, so the first one is the rental car, single line of text. If I leave this as a single line of text, they're going to have to type in a value, which for creating automation and views of your list, that makes it a little bit difficult because maybe I want to standardize what options that they have. So a single line of text may not be the best option. Plus, it leaves it up to them to type it in correctly and spell it correctly. So that's another thing. Our next option is a multiple line of text. So when you select, let me go back to single line text real quick. Some little caveats on this one that I like to point out. When you create a single line of text, the default length for that is the maximum of 255 characters. If you know the longest thing they're ever going to type or enter in there is 25 characters or 40 characters or whatever, make sure you right size this column because otherwise it leaves 255 characters reserved in the database that supports all of this. And when you go to search for things, it may find in the first 10 characters a match, but it's got to go search the other 245 characters before it's like, yep, that's a match. So when you're looking for things and the searching and indexing, you're going to speed things up if you right size your columns. And when you create them from a template or an Excel spreadsheet, it always sets the default at 255 characters, which is too much. All right, so the description is the other one that you need to pay attention to. Again, we need to provide information. Everybody skips this because it's not required. But in a list or library, this is the prompt that they see next to the form or the item when they fill it out. So give them instructions as to what you want them to put in there. And the required this column contains information. They will not be able to submit an item unless they fill it out. So this might be a good idea to make as required. All right. There's several of these that are consistent across all of the data types, but let's look at the nuances between the two. or the rest of them. So multiple lines of text. This one has, I believe it's used to be 65,538 characters, but that changes. That's a lot, but these are usually used for notes or description fields, things like that. Again, give them a prompt as what you're looking for them, whether you want it to be required. Then we have the ones that are specific to this type of column, which is, do you want them to just enter plain text? Do you want them to be able to add, text with pictures and tables and bolds and formatting, things like that, or not? And then as they make changes, so if maybe this is a notes column, they would it would create different entries in it, like a little history of it, if you add this append changes to existing text. Okay. Choice. These are the ones that we use when we want to give them a drop-down list to choose from. So again, your description, your requirement. This one, enforce unique values. It's the first time we've seen that option. What that means is this entry can only exist once in the list. So I see people turn this on for things like a last name. Chances are you might have somebody with the same last name. So enforce unique values means that entry in this column can only happen once. And something like a last name, not a good idea. Something like a product code, that would be good because you don't want to have duplicate products in that list. Or if it's a employee ID number, so you don't have the employee in there more than once. So something like that, enforce unique values. Then we give them the choices that we would want them to select from. And you have drop-down menu or radio buttons or checkboxes. So the drop-down menu and radio buttons are single choice. They have to pick one or the other. It's just how they're presented. Or checkboxes allow them to select multiple items from the choice list. So you may want to turn that one on. Fun fact, radio buttons, if you don't know why they call them radio buttons, let me tell you. I grew up in a 1969 Chevelle, and my seat, because I was the little one, was in the middle of the front seat, and right in front of me was the radio. And in the old radio, so I'm dating myself, they used to have these little push buttons where you could preset your favorite radio stations. There was nothing digital about it, just kind of did a little slider and tuned it over. But you couldn't push more than one button in at a time. So, when you pushed one in, the rest of them popped out. So that is why they call those radio buttons. And all right, allow fill-in choices, yes or no. If I don't provide them, maybe I give some standard choices I want them to choose from, but I want them to be able to type in basically like other, and they can type in whatever they want. You can turn that on or off, so you can standardize the entries or give them a little bit of latitude there. And then what is the default choice? All right. Next, we have number. So the number field, again, required or not, unique values or not, but now we can designate a minimum or a maximum. So maybe the maximum amount that I would want them to be able to spend on a rental car is $200 or something like that. You may want to put some guardrails on what numbers they can put in there. Do you want it to recognize decimals, yes or no? And what is the default value of that? And is this a percentage? Next, we have currency, and I always like to show the difference between the two. Currency has the exact same settings as the number. Now, the thing that you have to watch on the currency, you can create number fields for money values. That's fine. They can put that information in there. But if you create any calculations on that column, you're going to have penny rounding errors because the difference between number and currency is kind of how many decimal points are recognized. So you want to be very careful about which one you pick. If you're working with money, if it's a money value, always, always, always make it a currency. Okay. Again, how many decimal points? And in here, we can tell it which currency format we want it to be displayed in. All right, date and time. So date and time columns are, let you, as it kind of indicates, date and or time or both. You can say date only or date and time, and then standard or friendly. So what does friendly mean? Friendly means instead of saying December 15th, 2022, it's going to say today. If instead of saying December 16th, 2022, it's going to say tomorrow. I do not like the friendly format. I can type in tomorrow and it knows what I'm talking about, but it tends to confuse people because tomorrow, each day, tomorrow is a different day, right? So, it does store it for the value. So just put the value in my opinion. All right, do you have a default value of today's date or specific date and time? So if I use date and time, then it's going to show the date and time in there. Now, one thing I need to show you because of the way content comes over in a list from other formats. So I'm just going to bring up Excel and do a new workbook. All right, so why is this important to know? When you are working with dates, dates are actually have a date value. So if I were to put in 12/15/2022, because of the way I typed it in, Excel knows to format this as a date. It's like, oh, that looks like a date to me. Okay, great. If I want to put in, let's say, my son's birthday, right? So that also has a date value. Yeah, he got older than me because, he's 28. I'm only 27. So he got older than me this year. If I wanted to find out how old he was, I can use these and subtract the values. So if I want to subtract today's date minus his birthday, he's 10,486 days old. Boy, does that make me feel even older. All right. But how does it know that? It doesn't go back through a calendar and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are actually values, and I call it the star date. So captain's log, star date, blah, blah, blah. If you are a sci-fi person at all, or watch Star Trek, you've heard that. At the beginning of each episode, it states that. So what do they mean by star date? January 1st, 1900. If I were to go over here and type in number 1, and format that as a date. January 1st, 1900 is number 1. January 2nd, 1900 is number 2. Every day since January 1st, 1900 has been assigned a sequential number. And the content that comes over when you bring dates in from other sources, it doesn't bring in the date, or sometimes it brings it in as text, which is not what you want because then you can't use calculations like this. These, if I go back and format them as numbers, this is today's star date, 44,910. And my son was born on 34,424 star date, right? Notice the decimals. If I type in 44,910.5, guess what that would be if I change that to a date and time format. So I'm going to choose more number formats under the date option and choose one of the ones that has the time attached to it. And you'll see that's noon today, right? So it's recording the date value, and the decimal of the day is the time. You will see this if you're bringing information over from another source, you will see this. Or if you've ever gone in and typed in, let's say I type in 52 and hit enter, it will show up as a date because it's adjacent to a date. So it thinks you want to do another date, and it'll put in whatever the 52nd day of 1900 is. Okay, so just be aware of that. When you are working with data, it's actually recording numbers in the back of the database and presenting it with different formats, because I can take this same and record it as, or format it as a short date, or format it as a long date, or format it as one of the many other date options that are back here. And again, these are all data source things, right? So maybe I want month, day, year, or day, month, year, that type of thing. You can kind of see what the preview would look like from the option that you choose. Okay, so just keep in mind, those are actually numbers, star dates. So when you are creating these, again, importing from other places, sometimes you have to change the data type. All right. Lookups, if you already have content on this in your SharePoint site that let's say I want to look up to the product list and find something, you can use other lists in your SharePoint site as the source of the values that show up in a drop-down list. So instead of having to maintain a choice column that changes all the time, you can create a list and maintain that list and add the values that you wanted to be displayed there. Okay, so that's another option. Yes, no to me is kind of misleading. Yes, no, it's a checkbox. It's in, the database world is called a Boolean or Boolean, however you want to pronounce it. It's kind of like, is it a GUID or a GUID? Everybody kind of says a little bit different, but it's just a checkbox. So is it archive? Check, yes or no. Is this active? Check, yes or no. You can, do they want a rental car? Yes or no, okay. Person or group is looks at your Active Directory entry, so all the users in your Active Directory. So I don't want to get too technical on these, but each person in your environment has an account. So up here at the top, when I see Megan, it knows who I'm logged in as. So it's important if you are creating views and you want to make them more dynamic, maybe you want to create a view that's filtered by a specific person. Yes, they could use a single line of text and type in Megan Bowen, but that locks it down. I'd have to have different views for different people. If I want to use this as a filter, then I can say there's a special filter I'll show you called Me, where it looks at who's logged in. But in order to do that, you have to have selected them from the Active Directory list. So the address book that's in the background. So that's what this is for. You can choose just people or people and groups, and you can limit who you can select from, all users, or if there's just a specific group that you want to limit it to, because maybe you are in an environment where there's 10, 14,000 people. You don't want people to have to look through 14,000 entries with potentially same name, different people. Maybe I just want to limit it to the people that are members of this site so that it narrows it down for them. Okay. And then how do you want that to be displayed? The default is name with presence, but there are, a lot of other options that you can display from their address book information if you wanted to put it there. Okay. Hyperlinker picture. So if they have a website that they're working on, then you can use the hyperlinker picture. And maybe it's a link to an email address, that type of thing, anything you would hyperlink to. Calculated columns, you can use them as basically a little formula builder. So just like most of the formulas that work in Excel. So I'm going to pop back over to Excel real quick. On the insert function, so if I want to use dates and I want to know the difference between two dates, then I can use different, sorry, the one thing I can't turn off. All right, on the formulas option and insert function, almost every single one of these functions work in your SharePoint lists, Microsoft lists. So if I wanted to know what the max of a specific currency value was, I can put it in there. I want to know the difference between dates. So if I type in date, for example, here's all of the date related functions. So if I wanted to know what the date value of a specific field was, I might put in date value. And then the different functions have what we call attributes or arguments. So it needs to know where is the field that has that in there. So I'm just going to pull up payment just so I can show you real quick because people can relate to this. When you are working with trying to figure out how much a payment is going to be, the arguments are the pieces of the puzzle that the function needs in order to create the calculation for you. And in our world, when you're trying to figure out, let's say, what your car payment is, things we need to know are the interest rate, the length of the loan, and the amount of the loan at the basic. Those are three things, and then there's a couple of other ones. So we need to know what those pieces of the puzzle are. And you have rate in M per PV, FV, and type. What the heck does that mean? I like using this because it's my cheat sheet. So if I choose that one, now it takes me into the function arguments. And as you select each one of those arguments, it will explain here at the bottom what they're looking for. Right? The ones that are bold are required. The ones that are not bold or just standard text are optional. So you can use the exact same functions in your SharePoint or Microsoft lists as you do in Excel. So I encourage people to go in here and play with this and use it as their cheat sheet and make sure it works. The difference is instead of rate and per PV, as my, the cell addresses for those. In SharePoint, it's going to be the columns, and they put them in square brackets. So if I want to know equal, I'm going to put in today. I think I have to put it in square brackets. Today minus the modified date, for example, then I just created a function or formula that'll figure out how long this entry has been in this item. So the modified date is a timestamp that it puts it in there. And then how do you want the output of that? So sometimes we want it to be text, sometimes it needs to be a number, sometimes it's a date and time. So what is the data to be returned from the calculation? All right, and the only one I'm going to cover in here is image. You can designate this as an image, and it'll let you upload and attach an image. And then potentially manage metadata. What I found is most companies haven't gotten to that level of sophistication in Microsoft 365 where they actually have managed metadata, but there may be standardized lists like departments or locations or products or things like that that the company has created standardized lists for, and you can choose from that data source instead of having to recreate it yourself. Okay, so those are the different types of columns you can create. So rental car, in our example, maybe I want to say, do you need a rental car? I'm going to say yes or no. Say, here again is my question to them. Do you need a rental car? And the default value is yes or no. So I'm going to say no is the default. And let's do another one. So I want them to choose their preferred rental car company. I'm going to go in and create a column and preferred rental car company. Or let's say preferred, because this column name gets really wide. Okay. This one I'm going to give them a choice and let them say, do they want hertz or dollar or enterprise or box? Okay. And I am kind of OCD. I like things to be in alphabetical order. So I'm going to make sure I put them in alphabetical order in the list. And do I want them to choose one or two? I can choose checkboxes. Now here's the kind of the caveat is you can't just say pick two of the above or pick two. You can't do that. Oop. And our description is like, please select up to 2 rental car companies. So I can put the instructions in the description, but I can't limit how many checkboxes that they can select from the options that are provided. All I can do is give them instructions. And then do I want them to have a default value? I'm going to take away the default value choice. So I'm going to require that this, if I say require this column contains information and they don't need a rental car, guess what? They are not going to be able to complete their entry. So again, be very careful about the things that you put as required. Okay, so I'm gonna click OK. And let's go back to our travel request list. Now I want to add a new one. So this is going to be for M365 Twin Cities, shameless plug. It's coming up and I'm so excited. Speaking events. This is one of my absolute favorite events. I can't wait till Philly gets back in person because y'all have my favorite brewery there, which is Evil Genius, and I can't wait to go back. Purple Monkey Dishwasher is the best beer. My son actually owns a brewery here, and I can't get him to make that beer for me. All right. Speaking events for M365 Twin Cities in Minneapolis. All right, who's the requester? So again, this is a people or person. So I'm going to put in Megan now. And where am I going? Minneapolis. Now this is a little, this is the new location option, it actually is looking for addresses or specific locations. So if you know what your address is, maybe, what's the destination airport might have been a better question. So maybe it's Minneapolis St. Paul Airport. Our travel date, you can either type it in or you can select it from the calendar. So let's say we're going to leave on the 19th, and maybe I make this a bizcation and hang out with my friend Michelle, and I get to stay a little bit longer. So I'm going to choose the 23rd. Which airline do I want to work or want to fly? I'm going to do another shameless plug for Alaska, even though I don't know if they go to Minneapolis. All right, so estimated airfare. Here's those currencies. Notice the prompt, estimated cost of airline tickets. So this one's going to be, let's say, I looked yesterday, it's $400. Where am I staying? I want to stay at the Marriott. Again, this is a location, Marriott, Minneapolis. So I can actually search Minneapolis, there we go. Maybe it's this one or a different one. I know either the address or I know the title of it. It's like something garden, if I remember right. Anyway, Marriott, Minneapolis. Pick one. And then what the cost of it's going to be. I know they've got a rate, so $300. Now here is kind of the interesting one. I, as entering this, can mark it as approved. Do I want that to be an option? Probably not. Do I need a rental car? Yes or no? And if I do, what's my preferred rental car company? Right? And click save. Now, why is this one here? I'm going to show you that little trick. Okay. So this is our data entry for the list. From this, we can create Power Automate, like send a remind or send a request to the travel team that will be able to go in and track these. Or do I want to create an approval process around this so that people can submit them, but they're not approved until a request isn't, you don't start booking it till it's approved. So you can build business workflows around the entries in the list. Now, what about that one where I, as someone who entered it, was able to select it as approved? That's not a good quality check, right? Make sure that we're doing our business process the correct way. So here are the things that you can do in the list. So if I go to the list settings, one of the things that you might want to do is turn on what we call content types. And under the advanced settings, allow management of content types. Click OK. And now we have another group here. What content types allow you to do is create similar entries in one list, but different columns are available based on the type of entry you make. So maybe I have just maybe it's an international travel request, may have additional questions that I would want to ask that I don't need to ask for domestic. So domestic travel versus international travel. So how do I, if I put in here, what's your passport number, or do you have a approved global entry number? That doesn't apply to domestic. So then whoever's entering those values would have to skip over the things that don't apply to it. So the content types allow you to create additional items. So I'm going to create a new content type. These are done at the site setting level. So if I go to site settings and site content, here are our site columns and content types. Site columns might be create, passport number. And I'm just going to leave that as a single line of text. And right size it's probably the longest is 40 characters. I don't want to make it required because it's not necessarily required. And create another one called global entry. Or it's actually called your KTN, known traveler number. Again, single line of text. I think that one's about 10 characters. I'll give it 25 just in case. All right, You can always make them longer. If you try to make them shorter after there's entries and there's an entry that is longer than what you've designated, then it will truncate it or cut it off. So you want to be aware of that. All right. So from my settings now, I have my content types, and back in my list, go back.
Shari, just a reminder, you're only left with 5 minutes.
I know. Thank you very much. I got 2 more things and I'm going to wrap it up, I promise. Okay. So add the content types. Thank you for the time check. I appreciate that. All right. So list settings. Now that I can create a new content type and apply it and put it in to this one. So I have videos on content types if you want to know more about them. They're very, very powerful, but what changes on your travel request, instead of just saying new, it'll say new, and you can pick which type you want to. Is it a new item? Is it a new domestic, or is it a new international travel? All right, so I just want to kind of crack the door open on that one because of time, but just let you know you can create similar things in the same list with different data that's attached to it. Okay. So your lists are how we are going to track your information and share it with people, create some business flows behind it. But for me, when I go into a document library and I see an Excel spreadsheet in here that is literally just a list of data that doesn't have, no, this actually has stuff in it, but just a list of data, kittens die for me, because I'm like, why isn't this a list in SharePoint? Because you can export it to Excel if you need to. And you can work in it and create reports and things. You can create Power BI dashboards around the data that's in here. It's live, it's dynamic, instead of being static. And every time you update it, you have to update all your reports. There's just a lot more to Microsoft Lists than just tracking stuff. You can do a lot more with it. Then you can't build workflows around entries in an Excel spreadsheet. Okay. Right. Any quick questions that you may have? I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation again real quick. All right, so spoiler alert, it is SharePoint. So the columns that you can use and create in there, and make sure you check out our Empower Me. Again, I'll put this in the Q&A chat after I'm done, so you can request our Powerbytes learning. So if you want to learn more about lists or you want to learn more about content types, I've just kind of opened the door for you, and you can get a 30-day trial of our Powerbytes learning portal. I'm happy to share that with you. And for the event, I'm going to leave this up there for you. Make sure that you fill out the feedback, because people want to know what you liked, what you didn't. And as an organizer of events, this is helpful to us to know, what was good, what was not so good, we can improve it next time. So make sure that you provide that to our team. Okay. And enter the raffle, because you can win some snazzy stuff and $300 value. That's something I think we could all use. Right. And register for a chance to win some other great swag, Amazon gift cards, books, things like that. All right, I'm going to leave it with that. I know you have another speaker after this. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you for spending your time with me. And again, I'm Shortcut Shari. It's my job to make your job easier, and I'll put the links to my social in the Q&A chat. And let me know what you liked, what was your favorite aha moment, or how you're going to use lists. Would love to know. Feel free to reach out to me on social. All right, I'll turn it back over